What should a godly couple do who is considering marriage to make sure sexual sins from previous relationships are dealt with? Number one, total candor and total honesty about what you've done before you marry. I think that's the idea. Considering marriage, yeah. Total. Now that's going to be really hard. I mean, some people are going to say, this would be better if she didn't know or he didn't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. Noelle and I did not have sex with anybody before we married. Neither each other nor anybody else, unless she's not telling me the truth. And I think she is telling me the truth. But she had a boyfriend or two. And I remember being uncomfortable with that and wondering, what do they do? They do anything? Misbehave? And so I asked her one time, did you ever kiss him? Because we're talking high school. And she said, yeah. Everything in me did not like that, you know? Isn't that strange? I mean, people today are so fast and loose with their sexuality. A kiss that probably didn't mean anything to anybody, but did to me. I wanted to say, how? I didn't go there. But I'm resonating with this question and the problems. I am glad that I knew that first. And here's one of the reasons why. We'd been married probably 2 years, I can't remember exactly. It was within the first 3 years. We were living in Pasadena, California. Noelle gets a letter in the mail and starts to cry. She goes outside. She walks outside to be away from me. I let her go. I said, whoa, what is that? And I walk out after a while and say, what's wrong? And she said, Jackson was just killed in Vietnam. This is the old boyfriend. I'm glad I knew about Jackson at that point. Because I think it just helped me deal with the fact that this isn't a hidden, way too much devotion invested in Jackson here, you know? And so I just think it's going to backfire if you don't tell the truth. So that's my first point, is that candor and honesty about what you've been through. If you can't deal with each other's backgrounds, you probably can't deal with life, you know? Marriage is trust. And you got to trust with what, the junk that's in the past and whatever might be coming in the future. Second, that's not, I mean, honesty is not the main thing. It's just a crucial thing and was big for us. Marriage is considering marriage to make sure sexual sins from previous relationships are dealt with. They have to be dealt with God first. Then they can be dealt with each other. In other words, if both of you know Christ has forgiven my sins. In Jesus Christ, I'm as pure as the driven snow. And my resolves to walk in chastity and walk in purity from this day forward and be a virgin for you until we're married count for something. To know justification by faith alone, to know the purifying work of the blood of Christ is a glorious thing, so that you can look at each other and say, I'm looking at you the way Jesus looks at you. And if you're enjoying the forgiveness of Jesus, I'm going to enjoy forgiving you the way Jesus does, and that he's forgiven you that way. If he's blotted out all that sexual sin, I'm going to blot out all that sexual sin. So I think the essence of the answer is we deal with it gospel-like in forgiveness and justification vertically, so that we can hand that to each other as a gift on our wedding day, that same forgiveness. How should a husband and wife manage having opposite sex drives Does it make a difference if one partner's lack of sex drive is from a medical condition? Well, let me take the first part. Paul addresses this pretty directly in 1 Corinthians 7, in the first paragraph of that chapter, when he says to the Christian husband and wife, do not withhold from each other, sometimes translated, your conjugal rights, which means sexual intercourse. Do not withhold that. Does not the wife's body belong to the husband? Does not the husband's body belong to the wife? Now, those are radical and dangerous statements, to say that your body is mine. What balances it is she says the same thing. And I don't want your body on my body. I mean, so this is what that text says is compete with each other about how to bring the other person joy, to maximize the other person's gladness, satisfaction. Now, that does not solve the problems, but it gives you an orientation that is so wholesome and so helpful. Because it doesn't solve the problems, because if she says, I'm too tired for this, for sexual intercourse, and he's communicating, it would be really nice right now. She should give and he should relent. That's the way it should be. I mean, his heart should be, I'm not going to make you do this, no matter how strong I feel. And hers should be, I'm here for you, no matter how tired I am. Now, how does that bring a solution? It's a matter of degrees, I think, probably, and who at that moment is maybe the most sanctified, who's experiencing the grace to yield. And I just think if you preach hard to a husband, serve her. Don't manipulate her, use her. Don't turn her into a mannequin for masturbation. Don't treat her that way. She's a human. You want her all there. You don't want to use her. You want her there, enjoying you. That's the point of this. Mutual consummation, psychologically, spiritually, and now expressed physically. And those are the best moments of all, is when the physical event is the consummation of a spiritual, psychological, whole event. So I think we should be preaching to men. Don't think of your wife as an instrument to be used for sexual satisfaction. Think of her as a whole person who has her own deep longings and desires, and you want to live in such a way as to draw her in. And that, of course, foreplay begins with whether you're washing dishes or not. That's foreplay. If you help her wash the dishes after supper, if you help her clean up, if you serve this woman, this is about sex, right? This is because if you just, she's made a nice supper, you finish it, you go plop yourself on the couch, watch TV for 3 hours, get red hot sexually because you're watching 50 sexually connoted, whatever the word is, advertisements, and then it's 10:30, say, I'm ready. She's not going to be ready. That's ridiculous. So, am I getting at this? Probably not. How should a husband and wife manage having opposite sex drives? What I'm saying is they manage it by loving each other like they love themselves, and by not being demanding, but by each trying to serve the other. And they meet somewhere in the middle in a way that both of them perceive the other wants the good of the other. Neither feels used by the other. And the wife, I'm going to use her because it's more typical that a wife has less desire for sex than a husband, though that's not universally true. She will want to accommodate his stronger desires, and he will want to not give the impression that she's only there for sexual satisfaction. And they'll find a way in the middle as Christ gives them grace and humility. This last part of the question, does it make a difference if one partner's lack of sex drive is from a medical condition? Well, I'm sure it makes a difference. And I think what the man or the woman would want to do is to come alongside the one who's got the medical condition and empathize and say, what's it like? And then work at it. I mean, I know a couple that sexual intercourse is painful for her for whatever reason, and it's not clear whether the reason is entirely physical or whether there are psychological components. I know another situation, this ended in divorce, and I did the marriage, and I was just heartbroken. It's a long time ago. Nobody about them knows who this is anymore. Where as soon as they got married, it emerged that she thought sex was filthy. Her mother had drilled into her. She had seen it in the parents' relationship. To have sex is to do a dirty thing. And therefore, she was constantly pulling away, and felt like his desires were unclean desires. And that never got fixed. They broke up. No matter, I couldn't provide the help that they needed. She was deeply, deeply wrong about that, and deeply wounded by her background and maybe other things. So I know that physical and psychological things, not just different sex drive in an ordinary way, do make things extremely difficult, and I would say it calls for a lot of patient, loving care so that the person who's got the condition feels understood, feels listened to, so that you're not just saying, get yourself fixed because that's what marriage is supposed to be, but rather coming alongside, doing whatever medically, psychologically can be done in order to find a pattern that's workable. There aren't any ideal sexual experiences in the world, I don't think. Every woman probably has a picture in mind of what she would or wouldn't like, and every man has a picture in mind, and they're never identical. I don't think they're ever, maybe once in 1,000, you would say, this marriage represents her receiving, giving exactly what she wants, and he receiving exactly what she wants. They're always in total harmony all the time. That just never happens virtually, which means marriage is a test case for sanctification and for self-denial, and it works both ways. What do you think of using the internet to find a spouse, assuming no moral standards are being compromised? When I have heard about couples and known couples who have met through eHarmony or others, I feel good about it. The ones I've known. And it's made me, the feeling it's made me feel is, I wish the church would do this better. Why should people have to go to the internet, for goodness sakes, to find a spouse? And yet I totally understand. It's a way of putting out all these profiles, and then you put out your profile, and you say, that looks really interesting. I mean, I just think that's totally normal. I mean, that's the way you get married. You want to know a guy, and he wants to know a gal, and if there's enough commonality, let's talk. But it ought to be happening, I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. I just think, I wish it were happening in a more natural way in the church. And it does. Most people still find their spouse through. But the dynamics, evidently, of the relationships for a lot of people are such that you can't get a profile on a guy real easily in give and take, in ordinary, group sessions. If you go bowling together as a group of 10 people, you may not get as full a picture of this fella if you read 30 things about him online. So I'll tell you, my idea is that the church ought to just set up eHarmony. Every church ought to have an eHarmony. or something like that. So if you're single and you're going online to check out somebody in your church or your neighborhood, I'm not going to spank you for that. I'd probably do it myself. I was so chicken when I was a, oh my. Yes, I probably would have. If a husband or a wife has cheated, but then they've decided to stay together, where do they go from here? I think it's going to be incredibly important that they confess what they've done, not hide it. A man who commits adultery or a woman who commits adultery and then hates what they've done, renounces it, might think, maybe they never to know. Maybe they never have to know. I doubt it. I doubt it. I'd resist that temptation, and I would deeply renounce and repent towards God, and then I would go to her or him in some moment where there's enough time to deal with it deeply and confess the whole situation and plead with them for forgiveness and ask them to trust again, and then be willing and able to deal with the distrust that's going to last a long time. She or he may forgive quickly. Trust and forgiveness are not the same. She thought you were faithful, he thought you were faithful, and you weren't, and so how does she know you're not now pulling the wool over her eyes? And so a man needs to settle it. I have wrecked this marriage for probably several years to come. I've got to win her again. I've got to establish again what has been so wounded. When a wound that deep has been delivered to a woman's heart or a man's heart, you just stitch this up and go on as usual. That doesn't happen. And so I would say, where do we go from here? We go to confession to the Lord, receiving profound, deep cleansing of the blood of Christ. You go to the wife or your husband, you lay it out with broken-hearted confession, and then you, with deep confidence in God, expect that there will be distrust for a long time, and you humbly win her back. You don't say, well, I thought you were supposed to forgive me. You're acting like you don't even trust me. Well, that attitude is the attitude that caused the sin in the first place. Humility doesn't talk like that. It just returns good for evil here and loves and loves and loves until the thing is rebuilt fully. And that time will come. It can really come. I've seen it come for couples. My spouse is being nominated for church leadership, but our household, especially our marriage, is not in order. What should I do? So that, I assume, is a wife probably saying that a husband is being nominated for something like the eldership. And the elders, according to the Bible, are supposed to have houses that are in order, children well managed, and an admirable relationship with a husband or a wife. And she's saying she knows things they don't know, or either they don't care. Now, whether it's because they don't know or it's because they don't care is going to make a difference in how she deals with this. But I think, at least as one elder who is recruiting other elders, would want to know. And I think biblically, she would have a responsibility to share with an elder, maybe one or two that she knows, and say, have you considered interviewing, or have you considered asking these questions to my husband to see whether you think his understanding of the qualifications and his living them out is yours? So I think that's what she should do, is approach an elder. Now, if they're, so that's based on the fact that they may not know the situation. If they knew it, they would, I hope, redemptively enter his life and say, come on, we need to spend a year now working on this, because we see evidences of leadership in your life and biblical faithfulness in your life, but here's a piece that needs work before we go forward. That's wonderful when that happens, especially if he's agreeable. If she's in a church where the elders are just lackadaisical and they don't even think that way, then she's got another issue. She's got to find, I hope, somebody who would have some sense of empathy with her concern and see if they can help the elders grow in their understanding of biblical criteria. But that would be more complicated because they may just say, oh, you're being too picky or whatever. And in that case, I think she would just have to pray and let it go because she can't control what the church does. She might say, and I would encourage her to say to her husband, you know, as long as we haven't got this resolved or the kids are this way, do you think you should maybe wait? So I think that would probably be wise. What should I do if my wife is telling me she doesn't love me, never did? We are still together, but she doesn't even want to spend time with me. I didn't yell at her. I didn't do anything. She is just saying she doesn't want me. What should I do? Cry a lot. And don't leave her. And pray for the grace not to be angry in a brutal way. When it says husbands don't, in Colossians 3, what's the word? Can't remember the exact word, but don't dishearten or put down or make your wife feel endangered or unloved. Pray that God would help you to continue in that. There are times when the church or individual Christians act like this towards their husband, Jesus Christ. I mean, like every day maybe. They get up in the morning and there's the Lord waiting to talk with them and to have some fellowship with them. And they go to the newspaper. And then they go to the television. And then they go into the car and they turn the radio on. And they go all day long and he's saying, excuse me? How does he deal with us when we treat him as though we really don't want to be with him? And the answer is he's merciful and he keeps coming back and he keeps awakening and helping. So I would say, stay there, pray for grace, keep loving the children, be strong for the children, and say to her, I made a promise to you, and you made one to me, and I believe that God can awaken again what you've lost. And if you say you never had it, I think you did, and I think God could restore it, and I would like us to just keep working on it. And I'll do whatever I can. I'm willing to go to counseling with you if that would help. But I'm here to stay, and I'm for you and not against you. And then he prays and joins with a band of guys to pray that the miracle of awakened love would happen in his wife.